All right, we're going to go ahead and get started here. Again, my name is Tom Lyons. I'm a senior engineer with Inflow Communications. Welcome to our webinar today on best practices for setting up and initially configuring an edge gateway. Today, we'll be going over a high-level process of how to get this set up in your system, an outline of requirements that you will need, supported environments, and then things to look for. Again, my name's Tom Lyons. I'm a senior engineer with Inflow Communications. I've been here for just over 6 years and have over 6 years of unified communications experience. I am a senior support engineer on this side, as well as a subject matter expert in Mitel, as well as Ring Central and Genesis Peer Cloud. I'll be taking you through this today. Before we get started, a few webinars we do have coming up as well, if these do interest you. On Thursday, we will have a webinar on using the mobility client in Connect. So this will be an overview of how to actually navigate through the menus and use the mobility client on your Android or iOS device. On the 14th, we do have a webinar on proactively monitoring event filters and notifications of your Mitel system. So how to set up notifications in your system for certain events that occur so that you can be on top of anything that happens in your Mitel environment. And then on the 15th, we will have a webinar on a Mitel and ShoreTel 14.2 to connect migration and what to expect. So if you're still on the 14.2 platform and are looking at moving to connect, this will outline the requirements, what we expect, the user changes, and everything involved there. A little bit about Inflow Communications before we get started today. We do have a sole focus on unified communications and contact center solutions. Voice is what we do. We don't branch into other products. We do voice. Voice is what we know. As a result, whenever you work with us for your voice system, everybody that you work with will be a qualified engineer that will be able to assist you with any issue you have or give you the information that you require. We are a platinum partner with Mitel, as well as partnered with Ring Central and Genesis Peer Cloud. We have offices and employees in 10 states currently, and currently support over 180,000 endpoints and over 800 customers nationwide, and in many cases worldwide. And we are maniacal about the customer experience. We want to make sure you get all the information you would ever need and then some, to make sure that your voice environment is not only doing everything that you would expect, but to make sure that we can deliver a consistent performance for you. Here's a quick snippet of the customers that we support. And as always, as we jump into this, if you do have any questions, there is a questions box in your GoToWebinar application. You can use that to ask questions. I do expect this webinar may go a little bit over our allotted time, so many of those may be answered via email. But if you do have questions, make sure that you get those into the box here. All right, and we're going to go ahead and jump right into it. So for you folks that are unfamiliar with the Edge Gateway, the Edge Gateway is a Connect specific appliance. So it is only on the Connect platform. It is not on 14.2. That will allow you to get remote connections into the PBX without the need for other hardware, such as like a hardware VPN for your users or a software VPN connection for their client. This will actually handle all of that. With supported Deskphones, such as the IP480G or IP485G, you can actually use the Edge Gateway to enable Deskphone use from a remote environment. So you could actually set one up in the home office, or you can also use the Connect client in conjunction with the Softphone to provide a Softphone experience, or do a mix of the two and use the client in conjunction with your Deskphone. Finally, it also provides the availability, if you have it in your environment, to set up agents to log into the interaction center for your enterprise contact center environment. So this allows you to even use your enterprise contact center remotely. There's a little bit of information you're going to need for the initial setup. This device is a virtual device only. There is no hardware that is supplied by Mitel for this. And in order to get this set up in your system, you're going to need one of the following hypervisors, either ESX of either 6.0, 6.5, or if you're on a later version of Mitel Connect, 6.7 are supported. There is also Hyper-V support in the later builds of Connect. If you are running Hyper-V and are interested in the Edge Gateway, I would recommend giving us a call so we can validate your version and make sure that that support is available for you. The Edge Gateway by default is going to use 2 cores and 2 gigabytes of memory in your hypervisor. In addition, you're going to need some external IPs to use with the device. These are used for the various services of the Edge Gateway, as well as an internal IP so that it can talk to the Mitel equipment. Under the external IP requirements, as you can see there, we're going to need 3 public IPs, one for each service used in the Edge Gateway itself, And we will also need 3 public DNS records. If we are using the Edge Gateway to use the ECC Interaction Center, we'll actually need a 4th DNS record. And I apologize, that should be next to the DNS record, not for the IP, because that is actually used with the reverse proxy service, which we will get into here momentarily. In addition, we're going to need 3 internal IPs to NAT these public addresses to. They must be outside the voice VLAN, and that will give you the ability to actually communicate from the outside world into the system. On the inside, we're going to need an internal IP that is ideally in the same subnet as the voice VLAN and the voice devices at your headquarters site. If it cannot be that, then it would need to be something that needs to be fully routable to the ShoreTel or Mitel equipment. To get this guy deployed, there is a downloads page in Director that has a link to download the OVA that is used to actually deploy the Edge Gateway device. And when this is getting deployed through your hypervisor, you're going to initially need your headquarters server IP address, and you're also going to need the internal interface address and subject mask for the Edge Gateway. When you open the console for this device to get this initial setup done, you will be prompted for a couple of items. First, you will be prompted for the server IP. Once the server IP is given to the device, it will actually reach out and grab files that it requires, at which point it's going to prompt you for accepting the license agreement and also going to prompt you for a configuration wizard. You want to make sure that you select yes for both of these. You will follow those prompts then to complete the initial installation of the device. It will prompt you for a username on the first portion of this setup. The default username is admin. And it will also prompt you during the setup to make some changes, including if you want to change passwords. We highly, highly recommend you keep these passwords as default. And I'll show you this on the next screen here. The default password for the admin user is ShoreTel with a capital S and a capital T. You can change this if needed. If you do, definitely make sure that you keep track of that so that we can get that information as well for troubleshooting and any help that you need when this Edge Gateway is being set up. This is a screenshot of that configuration wizard here. So you can see here up at the top, I did cut off the first part of the message, but where it says yes at the top, that is it, the system just asking you to accept the license agreements for it. And then it will ask you for that wizard for initial configuration. When you select yes, it's going to ask you for a series of different pieces of info. The first one is going to be the host name that you're going to use for the device. In this case, you can see that I have VEGW here. So this could be the FQDN that you're going to use with the Edge Gateway itself internally. Step 2, it's going to ask you if you want to use DHCP on the internal interface. We highly recommend saying no to this, because if this changes, then the record in Director would no longer function, and as a result, your Edge Gateway would not. So definitely set this up to use a static interface. Step 3 is going to ask you for not only the IP address for the internal interface, but it's also going to ask you for the subnet in a CIDR notation format. So you can see here, I am using 192.168.1.204, and I'm using /24. So I'm using a /24 or a 255.255.255.0 subnet here. And then finally, it's going to ask for the gateway for that interface, as well as a DNS server. In my particular case, they are the same. And then it'll ask you if there is a domain name, and then it asks you to change the admin or monitor passwords, which will, like I said, that is the ShoreTel with capital S and capital T by default. And we highly recommend leaving that unchanged. Once you enter that information, it's going to confirm the information that you put in, and it's going to either allow you to type in a number to change a particular item option if you would like to, or hit enter to save and exit. At this point, once this is all complete, you can hit enter, save and exit, and all of those changes will be deployed to the Edge Gateway at this point. At that point, you can set up the Director portion of the Edge Gateway as well. And in the Edge Gateway Director setup, you can set up the IP address of the internal interface, the NATed addresses of the RAST service, the turn service, and the reverse proxy, which we'll be going over here momentarily as well. You will need the subnet mask and gateway for this subnet. Remember, these IPs need to be outside the voice VLAN in order to function. These are essentially the external addresses that are listening. Each one of these services provides information either to the phones or the clients so that they can communicate effectively. Let's talk a little bit about the RAST service. The RAST service is the primary service for the Edge Gateway. It is actually also directly tied in with the primary internal NIC. As a result, this is going to be required at all times. And this is going to allow your desk phones from outside the office to be able to connect. So this is the desk phone support, for example, the 480G and the 485G phones. And there's a few different settings that you can configure in here. There will be an option for your maximum number of tunnels. This is essentially the maximum number of phones that the Edge Gateway will support. You can set it anywhere between 0 and 10,000. The default is 100. So if you want to use more than 100 phones, you may need to change this setting. Otherwise, if that is going to encompass the amount of phones you would have on the Edge Gateway, it's okay to leave this at the default. There's also an option for the configuration server. You want to add the fully qualified domain name of your HQ server in this field. This allows the phones to know where to go for options such as their history and their directory services, as well as allows them to do the initial reach out to the server so that they can get an assignment to a switch. In order for this to work, there does need to be an internal A record in your DNS for your HQ server. So that is highly important. Make sure that that's there as a part of setting up this process. And then finally, there's also an IP pool. So much like any other VPN that you would set up in your network, the Edge Gateway is going to assign a address to these phones as they come in on the internal network. This range of addresses must be excluded from your DHCP server to avoid IP address conflicts. Best practices for this would be to use a range in the voice VLAN or to provide a range that is fully routable to all the PBX devices. If you can provide a range in your voice VLAN, so like an exclusion of maybe 20 to 30 IPs at the upper end of the range, for example, that will greatly reduce any routing issues that could result. If there is another subnet that needs to be used, it can be done. There may need to be additional routing statements placed into the Edge Gateway itself in order to make the system know that it can get to that range. The turn service is NAT translation via relay. It allows for IP addressing using NAT. And all you need here is the FQDN you're going to use for that service placed into the Edge Gateway. So this would be something like turn.inflowcom.com. This would be the external DNS range used, and that's all that's required here. So nice and easy. And then finally, the reverse proxy tab. The reverse proxy tab is going to allow your Connect client, as well as if you're using them, you can set this up for the interaction center for your agents for your enterprise contact center environment. And you can even set this up for web conferencing using your SA100 if you are using the SA100 appliance. This service is what handles all of that. So to go through this here, you will need an internal DNS server on this page. This is required to allow proper connectivity. And one piece to put in here is this is actually not just for the reverse proxy service, it's for the RAST service as well. So you want to make sure that this field is definitely filled in with a proper internal DNS server. What will happen is if this isn't filled in, your phones won't be able to connect in because they won't be able to actually reach the server. So that's very important. And it is the same for Softphone and Connect client connectivity. You want to make sure that that is in there. There is also a max connections field on this page. This is specific for client and reverse proxy connections. So it is separate from the Deskphones itself. Just like the Deskphones, this can be between 0 and 10,000. It does default to 100. If you need more connections than that, you may need to increase this field. Otherwise, you can leave it as default. And then the three below it, the Connect Client FQDN, the Collaboration FQDN, and the Contact Center Reverse Proxy. These are all fields that are separate but ride on the same IP address in order to get those connections working. The Connect Client FQDN is going to be the DNS name that you're going to have your users outside the office connect to in order to use their Connect client. The collaboration one is for your SA100. So if you are setting it up to use those devices, you would put in another DNS record for that and have people point there, and that would be specific for web conferencing. And then finally, for the contact center reverse proxy, this would be another external DNS record, and using this DNS record, you would have your users browse to that, and that would allow them, using the Edge gateway, to actually reach the interaction center in your enterprise contact center environment and allow them to operate basically like they were in the office. Here's a few FQDN examples for what we would be looking at. This is going to be what you would need to get set up in order to make this device work the way that it needs to. So for each service, and remember, we've talked about the RAST service for phones, the turn service for translation and IP addressing, and the reverse proxy service for your Connect clients and your enterprise contact center. You will need one public IP, one internal IP to NAT to, and one public DNS record for each service. So as an example down here below, for my rast.inflowcom.com, which would be for my phones, I would make that as a public DNS record for an example IP there. So in this case, 14.15.15.16. And then I would make sure that that translates 1-to-1 to 192.168.1.204. Turn, very much the same. So you can see I'm just using sequential IPs here, and reverse proxy. So in your cases here, that's going to set up everything that's required for the system to create those external connections and then be able to forward into the internal network and let them work together. One thing you will notice is that ecc.inflowcom.com is just another DNS record for the same IP on the outside as the R proxy or the reverse proxy. All this is it just tells the system, hey, we're going to use the same IP, but if you're using this FQDN, you're going to one location. If you're using this one, you're going to the other. So that's how the system knows. And you can see here down below as well, the Connect clients point to that R proxy address. The Deskphones would point to the RAST address, and the ECC users browse to the ECC address above in a browser to access the interaction center. So nice and easy once this is set up. There are some additional needs in order to make sure that your Edge gateway is going to work the way that you need it to. And these are best practices for you here. So first and foremost would be IP phone resources at your headquarters site. And let's talk about that for a moment. If you're using desk phones, so as an example, maybe you are bringing phones home from the office, phones that are already set up, and you're going to have these phones then re-authenticate back in the system from a remote network. The nice thing about that is because you've already used the IP phone resources, they will still be available. So you may not need to actually set up additional resources for this. If you are using soft phones, so in this example, say your users normally have a desk phone in the office, they are going to go home and work from home, and they're going to use a soft phone. One thing to consider there is the soft phone does require an additional IP phone resource. This can quickly lead to, depending on the amount of users you're going to get set up for this type of setup, this may lead to you running out of IP phone resources. The good news is, if this does happen, we could spin up a virtual IP phone switch, which would provide additional IP phone resources for you. One thing to note about that is virtual phone switches do require a virtual IP phone license for each phone that is configured this way. So that is something to consider if you want to go that route. Desk phone users that will be set up outside the Edge gateway do need to be checked with the box that says enable remote phone authentication on their profile. This is found in the telephony tab of the user. It is a per user licensed feature. So that is important to note as well. And then for client users that must have a soft phone, you want to have the enable use of soft phone box checked on their user profile as well. And again, that is also a licensed feature. So if that is something that you guys do not usually use, that may be something you may need to look at license requirements for. However, you will be able to get users set up and test functionality even if you haven't used these before by turning on these settings. A little bit about ports. On the external side, 443 TCP and 443 UDP are used exclusively on the external side for all of the services. And these do need to be forwarded to your NATed addresses. So that's an important piece there for the external side. On the internal side, the Edge Gateway uses the exact same ports that you would use for any of your other ShoreTel devices, which is why we highly recommend getting that internal interface in the same subnet. And we highly recommend as well not disabling any ports on that internal subnet because there's a wide range that are used. If you do absolutely need to have that done, we can find the list of port requirements for you and work with you to help you get that working. Now a little bit about the setups, and we're going to start with the Deskphone setup. This is just a quick and dirty way to get these phones configured and ready to go. These phones, as we pointed out before, they point to the RAST FQDN, so the whatever DNS record we have set up for the RAST service. On your phones, they have to be configured manually. There's no batch setup to get this set up for the phones. They do have to be done one by one. They can be done ahead of time, or they could be done once the user brings the phone home. And here's how you do it. First thing you need to do is enter the phone setup. And in order to do that with your phone, with the handset down, you press the mute key on the phone, then you type in 73887 pound or setup pound. This is going to bring you to a menu with a number of options, one of which will be VPN. You want to navigate to VPN, enter that menu, toggle VPN on, it will be off by default. And then in the VPN gateway, you would enter the FQDN of the RAST service that you configured. Once you're done with that, you can apply the settings and the phone will reboot. At that point, it will start trying to use the remote gateway to reach out and enter the system. You may have to allow the phone in the Edge gateway in order to actually connect. And I'm going to show you that page here real quick. So let me go ahead and throw up my server here. So this is my lab server here. Normally you will have a hyperlink for the Edge gateway. This is my Edge gateway appliance here. I don't actually have a DNS record set up for mine, so I don't have a hyperlink, but I can still get to it by pointing to the IP/admin. When I do that, it's going to bring me to a page that looks like this at the very beginning. It'll be on the monitor tab. What you'll want to do is click on the configuration tab. And then on the phones tab, there is a allowed list, a blocked list, and a pending list. When you first connect a phone to the system, it's going to enter the pending list. It will contain the MAC address of the phone. And you can select that phone in the list, and you can either move it to the allowed list, which is this grayed out button down at the bottom here, or you can move it to the blocked list if it's not a phone that you recognize. This will allow you to make sure that you have full control of the system here, and make sure that any phones that should be connecting into your Edge gateway are allowed. For your client and Softphone, the Connect client points to the reverse proxy FQDN. So this will allow you to actually get in and look at the system. And let me do this. We'll pop open my Connect client, and I'll show you exactly where that field is for the ease of use for your users here. So when you first start up the client, it's going to ask you for your email or username or your password. There's a show advanced field. If I click on that, there's a server option here. In here, as an example with what I was doing before, I would type in rproxy.inflowcom.com because that is the reverse proxy address. In this particular case, that would allow my Softphone to connect into the system. Once it is, or I'm sorry, my client to connect into the system. Once the client is connected, you can then use the options in the Connect client to change to allow Softphone, which will then allow the Softphone itself to authenticate, and then you can use that in conjunction with the PC headset as your phone. The soft phones that come through the edge gateway are going to show up in director under telephones with the public IP address of the user they're assigned to. This is normal, and there's no pool needed for this. So you don't need to worry about that. Also, one additional consideration is because these are coming through the edge gateway, normally a public IP would have to be trusted in the system in order to communicate, but because it's coming through the edge gateway, it does work. So you don't need to worry about trusting any additional public IPs as well. The system handles all of that for you. Finally, just as a high level here, if you do get this set up and run into any issues, the nice benefit of the edge gateway as opposed to other VPN appliances or other ways to connect in the system is we actually have access to logs that we can look at to determine a point of failure, as well as some tools within the edge gateway itself. Definitely, if you're running into issues here, especially if it is a critical matter of getting this device set up, I would highly recommend contacting us on the phone for assistance. It's going to be a much quicker way to get that assistance and get that set up, and we can point you in the right direction. Just to put us all on the same page, we can troubleshoot anything that is coming through the edge gateway, look at those logs, and determine if there is an issue there. We can also kind of point in a general direction if it does appear to be something outside the edge gateway, such as perhaps a port being blocked, which we can identify by just not seeing certain traffic that we should be. So we can definitely leverage support on the Inflow side to get you the information you require to get your edge gateway up and running. And that concludes our webinar for today. Like I said, this is a high-level setup. From a basic standpoint, this will contain everything you need to get an edge gateway deployed up and running in your environment. At this point, if you have any questions that you haven't already asked, go ahead and throw those in here. It looks like we have one question here. So let me take a look at this here. Let's see. Does the Edge Gateway support VMware tools when deployed? I haven't found a way to enable the agent on the Edge Gateway, even with the VMXNet 3 NICs being used. To my knowledge, the VMware tools is not deployed by default on the OVA, and I would not recommend making any changes to that. When you set up the VPN ahead of time, do the phones that have the VPN enabled always use the VPN path after that point? Yes, with the VPN toggled on, then any phones that are set up that way are going to try to use the VPN connection to get in. So I would not recommend setting these up ahead of time, like weeks in advance, if your agents need to use phones, because you may disable their phones as a result of that. But you can do it and set up that connection before sending the phone home with your agents to make that easier. Or you could provide them the instructions that I gave you, because anybody can actually set up that piece once they have the phone powered on. Is this available for those of us still on 14.2 or just Connect? This is a Connect only appliance, so you would need to be on Mitel Connect in order to get this appliance to work. Any other questions? Is this service moving to the cloud in July? So the Edge Gateway would not need to be in a cloud. If you think about it, any sort of cloud PBX essentially does this already. You're authenticating to an FQDN that is then going to route you to the correct devices and the correct system based on configuration there. This is an on-premise piece of equipment. Is this a licensed product? It is. There is a license that is required for the Edge Gateway. My understanding is that it is a zero cost license. Any cost involved with setting up the actual device itself would be a part of pro services to actually get the device spun up, do troubleshooting, and make sure that it is working for you. But the license itself, there is a license required for the Edge Gateway, but it's something that we can just grab from Mitel for you. Any other questions? I'd heard this appliance was moving to the cloud in July. Will these slides become available? So I'd have to find out where you found that information about the appliance moving to the cloud. This is an on-premise device, so this is something that would be in your network and work with your on-premise PBX. So it would not be moving to the cloud. As far as the slides being available, yes, they will be. Our presentations do become available after a couple days so that you can watch them again. And you can watch them on YouTube by searching for Inflow Communications. You'll find this webinar as well as several others that may give you information that you need for your system. Any other questions? All right, looks like we're all good there. If you do have any additional questions, one just came through. Is there a benefit to running EGW as well as mobility? They handle two different things. So the Edge Gateway is going to allow you to use your Connect client just like you would on your PC or a Deskphone. Mobility is going to be an app on your cell phone. So it really just depends on your environment and how your people work with your corporation. If they're going to be on the road a lot, mobility may be a better solution. If they're going to be at a desk working in a contact center environment, or working in any environment where they're going to take calls off a work group or hunt group, I would highly recommend the Edge Gateway over mobility because it contains much more functionality for those. In particular, mobility does not support contact center. Mobility does not support SimulRing for work groups or hunt groups either. So if you need those functions, then the Edge Gateway in conjunction with either a Deskphone, a client with Softphone, or the client with the Deskphone itself would be a much better scenario. All right, and it looks like we're good there. Like I said, if you have any additional questions after the fact, then you can definitely contact us for any information that you require. For our current customer resources, you can send us an email at support@inflowcommunications.com. That is going to send a support ticket into our ticketing system. Those are answered in the order they are received. We also have a support portal at support.inflowcommunications.com. This will allow you to take a look at all of your tickets that you have with us at one time. You can actually reply to those there, look at the current status, and if you're the main contact for the system, we can even set it up so you can see all of the tickets that anyone in your organization has opened with Inflow. If you haven't used this before, you would want to let us know that you're interested in it so we can set you up, as there is some internal setup required to get that working for you. And finally, to contact us by phone for urgent matters, or if you just want to speak with somebody live, you can give us a call at 855-946-3569 or 855-9-INFLOW. We do have a 3-ring answer policy. You should not be on the phone waiting for 10 to 15 minutes to get an agent. And when you do, it is going to be a qualified engineer that will be able to help you with any of your voice needs. And if you want any information on our support packages and what we offer at Inflow, you can also send us an email at sales@inflowcommunications.com, or you can call us on the phone at 844-446-3569. Again, on behalf of Inflow Communications, my name is Tom Lyons. Thank you very much for joining us for our webinar today, and we hope to see you in the future. Thank you very much. Have a wonderful day.